And no wonder they're queer, put in Daddy Two-Foot, the Gaffer's next-door neighbour. If they live on the wrong side of the Brandywine River and right agin the old forest, that's a dark place if half the tales be true. You're right, Dad, said the Gaffer. Not that the Bandybucks of Buckland live in the old forest, but they're a queer breed, seemingly. They fool around with boats on that big river, and it isn't natural. Small wonder trouble came of it, I say. But be that as it may, Mr. Frodo is as nice a young hobbit as you could wish to meet. Very much like Mr. Bilbo, and in more than looks. After all, his father was a Baggins. A decent, respectable hobbit was Mr. Drogo Baggins. There was never much to tell of him, till he was drowned. Drowned, said several voices. They had heard this and other darker rumours before, of course. But hobbits have a passion for family history, and they were ready to hear it again. Well, so they say, said the Gaffer. You see, Mr. Drogo, he married poor Miss Primula Brandybuck. She was our Mr. Bilbo's first cousin on the mother's side, her mother being the youngest of the old Duke's daughters, and Mr. Drogo was his second cousin. So Mr. Frodo is his first and second cousin once removed either way, as the saying is, if you follow me. And Mr. Drogo was staying at Brandy Hall with his father-in-law, old Master Gorbadoc, as he often did after his marriage, him being partial to his victuals, and old Gorbadoc keeping a mighty generous table. And he went out boating on the Brandywine River, and he and his wife were drowned. And poor Mr. Frodo, only a child. I've heard they went on the water after dinner in the moonlight. And it was Drogo's weight that sunk the boat. I heard he pushed him in, and he pulled her in after him, said Sandyman, the Hobbiton miller. You shouldn't listen to all you hear, Sandyman, said the Gaffer, who did not much like the miller. There is no call to go talking of pushing and pulling. Boats are quite tricky enough for those that sit still without looking further for the cause of trouble. Anyway, there was this Mr. Frodo left an orphan and stranded, as you might say, among those queer Buttlanders being brought up anyhow in Brandy Hole. A regular warren by all accounts. Old Master Gorbadoc never had fewer than a couple of hundred relations in the place. Mr. Bilbo never did a kinder deed than when he brought the lad back to live among decent folk. But I reckon it was a nasty shock for those Sackville Bagginses. They thought they were going to get back in that time when he went off and thought to be dead. And then he comes back and orders them off. And he goes on living and never looking a day older, bless him. And suddenly he produces an heir. And has all the papers made out proper. The Sackville Bagginses won't never see the inside of Baggin now. Or it is to be hoped not. There's a tidy bit of money tucked away up there, I hear tell, said a stranger, a visitor on business from Mickle Delving in the Westfarthing. All the top of your hill is full of tunnels packed with chests of gold and silver and jewels, by what I've heard. And you've heard more than I can speak to, answered the Gaffer. I know nothing about jewels. Mr. Bilbo's free with his money, and there seems no lack of it, but I know of no tunnel making. I saw Mr. Bilbo here, he came back a matter of 60 years ago when I was a lad. I'd not long come prenticed to old Holborn, him being my dad's cousin, but he had me up at Bag End, helping him to keep folks from trampling and traipsing all over the garden while the sale was on. And in the middle of it all, Mr. Bilbo comes up the hill with a pony and some mighty big bags of a couple of chests. I don't doubt they were mostly full of treasure he had picked up in foreign parts, where there be mountains of gold, they say, but there wasn't enough to fill tunnels. But my lad Sam will know more about that. He's in and out of Bag End. Crazy about stories of the old days he is, and he listens to all of Mr. Bilbo's tales. Mr. Bilbo has learned him his letters, meaning no harm like you, and I hope no harm will come of it. Elves and dragons, I says to him, carriages and potatoes are better for me and you. Don't go getting mixed up in the business of your betters, or you'll land in trouble too big for you, I says to him. And I might say it to others, he added with a look at the stranger and the miller. But the Gaffer did not convince his audience. The legend of Bilbo's wealth was now too of the younger generation of hobbits. Ah, but he has likely enough been adding to what he brought in first, argued the miller, voicing common opinion. He's often away from home.